Okay. Um, Hi, I'm Doug. This is Austin.
Hello, hello. We're here to talk about stocks, finance, markets, not financial advice, of course. Just two guys talking what they want to talk about. We'll have a mix of individual equities, some macro, some spirited debates. For example, some full self-driving discussion at the second half of this episode.
Oh, you
But
think we're gonna get to that?
I think we're gonna get to that. I think it's the entree.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
It's definitely something that you and I have gone over on calls before, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So for those of you who are watching this recording, um, apologies. It's our first time trying to do this. Either of us for the first go, so we're kind of figuring out all the software and everything as we go. But um, the two of us met and had become friends via the internet talking stocks. So we shared some phone calls and stuff that have lasted several hours, and it was like, well, man, I wish we had recorded that. Some of the other people might have found that interesting. And yeah, so long term, we'd like to have, or short term, we'd like to have some other guests and get some other ideas on and give us stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it'll definitely be interesting if you guys are um, a fan of technology and investing in it and trying to watch a thesis play out. Um, we try to make our own opinions while also respecting, the disagreements and seeing the other side and seeing it from both angles. So with that said, I just wanted to pull up a chart here real quick of what is the innovation S curve. And I've got it right here. So Doug brought this to my attention just a few weeks back. This is the innovation S curve. Well, I knew of it, but he brought it to my attention that people invest in different spots along this curve. So here down on the low end, you're fermenting the technology. It's not quite proven out yet. And then you can see when it gets adoption and takes off. And Doug pointed out to me so wisely that people invest on different spots. So, Doug, which of these purple arrows that I drew on this chart are you?
Um, I'm I'm a little bit more the one on the left. For some context, I think we were talking about quantum at the time, right?
Exactly.
And I had made some early investments in quantum computing a little more than a year ago, being able to buy D Wave at under $1. And Austin was saying this is not real. There's no money. I mean, the classic bear case. I don't need to rehash them all now. He knows what they are. Everyone else knows what they are, right? This doesn't make sense. It's not a real business. We're hearing Martin Shkreli talk. We're hearing like Amit talk. We're hearing Chris talk. And the thing I pointed out is, different people invest at different times. With something like quantum, you're investing in the possibility of the technology. So is it something you put all your chips in? At least not me, but Austin has a different profile. He's not willing to invest in something until he sees a real business there.
I want to see some revenue, okay? When you walk into the Shark Tank, their first question is, what are your sales?
Yeah, well, they're also not bringing quantum computers to the Shark Tank either, because
That is also true.
I guarantee you, if they brought an operating quantum computer into the Shark Tank, all four of them would have been fighting each other to buy it.
Yeah, and I mean there's a lot of people who will invest right here on this line,
And we
and
know
those
one.
those are
We know at
Oklo
least one.
investors.
Yeah, we know at least one. But then there's others who won't touch it until they're at the top of the S curve, and they're like, okay, now it's proven. Now I can put my money into it.
Right. Yeah, here's your financial advisors who want to have you in some Verizon or what have you. Maybe that's unfair to pick on Verizon. I know you like Verizon and it's a cash flow machine, but
Um, Verizon's just my it's just the place I put it I don't have a better spot for it, and I want to take some risk off the table.
But at a high level, I'd say, I'm looking at spreadsheets and the technology and trying to find a combination of that along with forward outlook. So you have the spreadsheets that show what's already happened, and then you sort of have to surmise what's going to happen. And Doug, would you think it's fair to say that you're looking more at the technology and and you're overweighting that a little bit more, saying if you have a superior technology, that's going to, at the end of the day, eventually win out?
Yeah, I would say that, and this was true a year ago and it's still true today. If you're investing in quantum, you're investing in research. You're not investing in a business. You're investing in research.
Right, but that philosophy is not specific
If
to
all
quantum,
of
right?
these quantum companies were still private, that would totally make sense because they have a little bit of revenue. They're doing a little bit of business, um, but they are not. They're not a cash flow machine yet, right? They're certainly not profitable. So um, if you can spread a little bit of money in a lot of places, it's almost like being a VC when you find one of these real nascent industries, right?
Right.
Just spread a little bit around in, 3, 4, 5 different spots in the same thing. The reason I landed on D Wave is because I felt like the management was the most uh, um, just open and trustworthy. And I thought, based on what I saw the technologies, they were the closest one to being um, able to capture real revenue. Now, technologically, the problem they're trying to solve is not as difficult as somebody like Ionc is doing. So they're a little closer to their technological finish line, but without getting into the weeds of quantum computing.
Right, but
Um,
at the end of the
it's,
day, you're gonna get a
it's
lot
still a
more
small
alpha
bet.
if you are
Yeah.
able to successfully bet on the early end of that curve. Whereas
Yep.
if you're investing on the later end of that curve, there can still be some alpha. But my biggest position, Google, I'm not gonna make a 30x from here, like something like Rocket Lab has the potential to do because it's earlier on that curve. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be quantum or Verizon. There's a lot of stuff in between, which, like Palantir, we're both invested in. I'd
Yep.
say Palantir is in the middle of that curve, which brings me to sort of my next philosophy, which is management and moats. Super, super important. I over index those a lot. I really want to see that sustainable business model where they're not going to end up having to deal with margin degradation over, 7, 10, 12 years. That's the hard part, trying to figure out what businesses are going to look like in that window of time. Stanley Druckenmiller says, skate to where the puck is going, not to where the puck is.
Right.
I like that one a lot. So, Doug, before we jump into Google here, did you have anything else to say about sort of your approach?
Um, so I wouldn't want everyone to walk away with the impression that I'm an investor in purely nascent technologies. I like sure things as well, but I think it's safe to say that the biggest alpha I've experienced as an investor has come from finding early technology that I can get my hands on and can get a little bit of money into, and riding that up to a 10x or 20x rather than the ride of getting 18% a year in Amazon or something, or S&P.
Yeah, I'd say that's well said here. Now, we had some big news today. So we're recording this November 14th. We just found out some very big news. You probably have already heard about it. Um, Warren Buffett, or maybe Greg Abel is more
Yeah,
accurate
yeah, there you
to
go.
say. Yeah, is Berkshire's got $4.3 billion worth of Google shares now. They weren't the only one here with our 13Fs that came out today, but my goodness, 4.3 billion. It's not a small position. We've also got some ads from Altimeter, which is interesting because Brad was sort of pounding the table 6 months ago about Google being a 10 blue link company, and I know he's got investments in OpenAI, and he's been very bullish on them. But to see them jump into the mix was a bit of a surprise with a 1% allocation. There's some other big names there, some names that have even been a little bit pessimistic on Google, like Cato, that didn't even really include them in their future technologies list. But it's really interesting to see a lot of these super investors really,
I don't know
beating the drum.
how. I don't know how. So why did Berkshire wait until, I mean, I guess everything pulled back a little bit, but why did they wait till 280 to buy? Why were they not buying at 150?
Well, I don't think they did because you
Well, yeah,
remember
so
this
we're
report from
delayed.
September
Yeah,
30th,
true,
right?
true. We're delayed. So they weren't buying at 280, but they certainly waited until at what, 200, 220?
Yeah, 220, 240, and it you had that big clearing event, right, with the DOJ lawsuit that went away,
Mm-hmm.
and that was why I had leverage. We had lots of discussions around that time of like, if Google goes up by 30% and it's going up by 30% and you have a high level of certainty, do you want to apply some leverage to it? And we both came to the conclusion of yes, because you're going to have all these funds that just don't want to bear that risk of having their business model get blown up overnight if you know they end up splitting up the business or getting rid of Chrome. There was a lot that was up in the air at that point, and we made the bet that there was going to be a rush of liquidity back into the stock once that got settled. And
Yeah, but
sure
what
enough,
was
there it
what
was.
was the worst case scenario? They broke up and had to sell Chrome. Well, you would still own the, like, you would still own the Chrome part. It's not like they take that away from you. You're a shareholder in the company. If they had to split off Chrome, they would roll it out to its own business, and you would own shares in that business as well. I never saw that as a true downside. It might be a downside for Google, but it would have been an upside for Chrome to be its own business, for crying out loud.
Well, you've got like the integrations where you can log in to all these different websites. Even on StreamYard, just setting this thing up tonight had an integrated login. Think about any website you go to, log in with Google. Um, you know, you can go to Safeway down the street and just setting up a Safeway members account, log in with Google. There it is. So
Yeah.
they're really the master of the information. They've got all the data, and if you separated Chrome from that, I don't know if you end up getting a default search engine. So when you go up to the top of the browser there and you just type it into the bar, that's automatically a Google search. If somebody else owns Chrome, does that now become a Bing search?
Well, I mean, Chrome as its own independent business would be able to sell that off, but it's not like Baby Bills were directing people to use whatever it was, US Sprint or whatever at the time. No, they were all still in the Ma Bell family.
But I think the fear though was that the judge was going to force a sale to a competitor like OpenAI or Perplexity, and then it was going to almost instantly hand over Search 2.0, right? Agentic search, AI search, whatever you want to call it. It was going to hand them over a big lead going into the next decade, with search under construction. So I think that was the fear. But regardless, you had, a big wave of liquidity come back into the stock. Um, I don't. Do you still have your Google calls, or did you deleverage like I did?
I did leverage calls. I had my shares.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all shares at this point, just given the macro. Um, but Google's just been tremendous. I still hold 43% of it. Fundamentally, they're just so strong. Um, you've got YouTube, which I feel is the premier platform, more watch time than Netflix. I know you like Netflix, and they've got some pricing power, so they're going to be in the conversation for quite some time. But as far as diversity of content and on-demand content, music, podcast, uh, comedy,
even
sketches,
movies.
movies. Yeah, so I probably 15 times in the last year I've bought a movie for $3.99 and watched
Look,
it with my
there's
fiance.
there's free movies too on YouTube, which people don't even think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how good they are, but they're
No,
there.
they're regular like theatrical release movies, some big time movies.
Are they? Okay. I'm surprised they didn't have to, pay royalty and get that sorted out.
Streaming.
So, keeping along with the 13F
The
here.
wife just got home. She's looking at me. She's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, so we've got Stanley Druckenmiller, who I think is the GOAT. Lots of people say Buffett's the GOAT or somebody else. Maybe Jim Simons, you could say. I think Druck's the GOAT. When you listen to him talk about how to size positions and how to manage risk, he's totally emotionless and cold if the thesis is falling apart. If he's out of it, he's out of it.
And he
Say
doesn't
no
look back.
more.
Yeah.
Does not look back. Yeah, when the thesis is broken, it's gone. But when
Can
he's
I can I
yes,
throw up a spicy take before we get too far away from it? And the internet is gonna jump all over me on this. Warren Buffett is not that good of an investor.
all right, you got to justify that one.
He lived
Or
to
is
be
yours?
he lived to be 100. That's his superpower.
Yeah, he compounded for sure. He compounded.
He compounded for 3 more decades than the average investor does. 3 more decades.
But if you go back and look at 50s, 60s, and even the 2000s, and during the financial crisis, he made a lot of money during those windows too. And yes, he missed the big
If he
tech
did,
names
if he
that
hadn't have
we're all
bought
investing
Apple,
in.
if he hadn't have bought Apple, no one would know what his name is.
I don't know if that's true. He was already big time before Apple happened.
He,
Otherwise,
he
Carl
would have
Icahn wouldn't have
been
shoved it down his throat.
he would have been an investor that would have been noted. He probably would have been listed when people went through 13Fs. He would have been listed, but he wouldn't have been this icon of wisdom in investing that he is now. Because when you get 3 more decades, that's a whole career worth of investing
Right,
as
but they were
compounded.
filling up that stadium in Omaha back in the 90s, Doug.
Yeah, that's so, and he's compounded since then
Mm-hmm.
for 3 decades.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he wasn't good. Okay, I'm just saying he's wasn't the goat.
Overhyped. Okay.
He's the goat because he got 3 more decades. If he had retired in the 90s, they would have been, oh, blah, 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 it's great. And then some people would have wrote books and you wouldn't know what his name is.
I mean, I would know his name because I'm a dork, and I anyone who's relevant, I know who they are. But I don't know if he'd be nearly as a household name as he is. I think you might have a point there. Just because he got that title, world's richest man, and he had it for quite some time, that brings a lot of notoriety as well. Just having that title, right?
Yep, true.
Um, Keeping moving here on the 13Fs. Here's Coteau. This is a French asset manager. So they now have they did a huge increase here, 3.6x. So they had a pretty small position before this, and now they're sitting at 5.5%. I think that's quite the vote of confidence. Tiger Global 8%, and then for those who don't know, Himalaya Capital Management, Li Lu, Charlie Munger called Li Lu the Chinese Warren Buffett. He's sitting at a 37% weighting. And he's had this much for the last 3 years. He built
That's
most of
heavy.
that position in 2022. Yeah, it's very heavy. I mean, I've got a little bit more than that,
I was saying
but
that's almost Austin level.
yeah. I mean, in June, I was sitting at 55%, and about a third of that 55% was calls. It was deep in the money, but I'm younger. I can afford to take that chance. It was my portfolio size versus my income is a little bit different than someone who's 62 and getting ready to retire. Their portfolio size is going to be much larger relative to their income. So that's how I'll mentally justify that. And then you've got Ackman making a small reduction, but still sitting at 18.5%.
Still
And
a massive position.
yeah, pretty darn big. And then Chris Hone, he's a moat investor. He doesn't really take any chances. He talked in May on a podcast about why he decided that he wants to, sort of de-risk out of Google. He felt that it was a risky investment. Do you mind if I play this clip?
No, please.
Okay. Let's make sure I've shared the audio here. Let me know if you can hear this, Doug.
Maybe
Yeah.
our most risky investment, where they're clearly the company, and it's just one of our smallest investments as a result. It's and where we have some level of protection because there are businesses like YouTube and their cloud business, which represent half the market cap today, and their cash and other things. So it isn't all search, but search is critical. And so can they out innovate competition? There's a risk of search fragmenting, as competitors come in and try to, but it's a question mark. We don't think so. We think they have a lot of advantages of their data to have to offer higher quality search results, and but competition is increasing.
Talking of which, how do you think AI will change the investment landscape here?
It's going to increase disruption in ways we can't even predict, but there are things.
You can see there that there's some uncertainty, and he's just not quite sure where he thought AI was going to go. So that's why he reduced his position, and that's fine. You can look at his portfolio here and see some of the stuff that he's invested in. Very monopolistic businesses. He doesn't really play around with technology really to a large extent, other than Microsoft and Google, which are two of the biggest moat technology companies to ever do it.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's all I had for the Google 13F. Do we want to jump to Amazon just very quickly?
Yeah. I feel like you had a chance to look at this stuff today. I was out and about and talking with other folks and working on some
cool.
other things. So
yeah, so you'll be seeing this in real time.
I feel like I'm gonna make a reaction video to this.
All right, here we have the Amazon super investor update. So we had Soros with adding almost 2 million shares, now making it his largest position. So I found that pretty notable, basically going from almost no shares to making it his biggest position.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, George Soros was one of the people who taught Stanley Druckenmiller a lot of what he knows. So Stanley Druckenmiller will credit Soros for, when you're correct, don't show up with a small little bucket to catch the rain. You put out the big bucket when it's raining. You want to really maximize the opportunity. And Soros has mastered that over the years, and Druckenmiller took after that. So that's something that you'll hear me talk about quite often.
That sounds like I forget whose quote it was, but they said, the regrets I have are not the money I lost. It was the failure to go all in when I had the right bet on. And yep, can confirm that bites me a lot more in retrospect than investments I've made that didn't pay out.
Yeah,
and
you'll hear Munger talk about it too, right?
Yep.
He calls diversification stupid. He thinks it's a business school construct, and that it's for know nothings. He says if you actually know what you're doing and you have investing skills, again, you have to acquire those investing skills. You can't just jump straight to a 3-stock portfolio. I don't think that would be a good recommendation. But if you know what you know and you have a high level of certainty, you can really take advantage of that. Keeping it moving along here, Ackman, no change to his Amazon position here. And once again, Druckenmiller is showing up on the list here. So he had new positions of both Google and Amazon. This one's a little bit bigger for him, almost 2.5%. And then Altimeter showing up once again, 6%. Tiger Global, big position of 2.4 billion, increasing their stake by just a little bit, 7.5%.
Doubling it. Yeah, more than doubling it.
Yeah.
Alterock up
Alterock.
50%.
Well, look at that, 30% sizing for Alterock. That's another company just like Chris Hohn's TCI. They're
Mhm.
or even Dev Kantasaria. I haven't even looked at his 13F yet, but this is a moat investor, Alterock. So they really like to find like their best 5 or 6 ideas and really just shove the pile. You're starting to notice a theme of who I follow, Dougie, aren't you?
Yep.
And then Berkshire, tiny little position, just under 1%. And by tiny, 2.2 billion. That just means tiny to Berkshire, not an absolute value. David Tepper trimmed some, but it's still a very large position for him at almost 7.5%. Daniel Loeb of Third Point, almost 7.5%. And then you've got Cateau. Once again, they trimmed a little bit, but still sitting at just under 5%. So that was the big Amazon 13F update. And then I had something that I was gonna talk about with Munger. Made me think of Munger when we were talking about concentration. And it was around how Berkshire actually missed Google the first time around. Did you know this?
No.
So Berkshire was actually in 2019, he was kicking himself for not spotting Google earlier. So when all this news broke and everything went crazy today, everyone started freaking out about, did Warren Buffett buy Alphabet? This was one of the quotes that I saw that was floating around from a Reuters article that got reposted by Yahoo Finance. But the idea here is, he says, I don't mind not having caught Amazon early enough. Bezos is a miracle worker, very peculiar, but I feel like a horse's ass for not identifying Google earlier. We screwed up. He said similar comments about Walmart as well, but I thought this was really interesting that Munger recognized that Google was a fantastic business in 2019, still didn't invest. Had you bought some Google in 2019, you'd still be doing very well at this point.
Mhm.
Even if you did catch it a little bit late. So that's where that S curve comes back into the fold there. You can actually invest around about the middle of that curve in some instances and still end up with a very handsome return. You want to lead us off with housing? I know that's your steak and potatoes.
Well, we had the housing burn has been going on for a while now. And I just want to rewind a week ago to Election Day when we had a socialist / communist be elected mayor of New York City, largely on a platform and a topic that everyone is now calling affordability. So, and apparently it's a national crisis. We know it's a problem, but there's a lot of things that go into it. And rich people owning homes is not all of it, right? Nice Celsius swig there. People who are homeowners are largely stuck in their homes now. They've got mortgages that are, 2.5%, 3.5%, 4%. None of these people are interested in upgrading to a home, or if they're older, downsizing to another home where they're going to have to take on a mortgage that is twice as large. You want to pull up a mortgage calculator. I don't care what number you want to put in there for the house amount. Compare the mortgage at 3.5% versus 6.5%. People can't move now. And the Fed doesn't look like they've actually come down now, and our I guess we don't have a dot plot from them, but our prediction now is less than 50% that we're going to get any kind of relief on interest rates and therefore mortgage rates in December. So the housing market is pricing out the young homeowner, the young first-time homeowner. First-time homeowners is now the average first-time homeowner is now 40 years old. And you can see that people just can't afford that monthly payment now. Can you scroll down? And
That might not be the best visualization here. I think this one might do us a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to rehash the whole thing. I want to give the audience a little bit of credit of having some context here, not having to explain it from the get-go.
Sure. Yeah.
But,
I mean, 3% versus 6%, you're looking at, $700 of monthly payment difference.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, you amortize that over 30 years, you end up paying a hell of a lot more interest, obviously, with the higher rate, and it is a problem. Lots of people are locked in and they can't move, and I think there's lots of issues happening here all at the same
Yep.
time. You've got red tape or NIMBYism, or just lack of space in like LA, SF, where they just don't have that much room to build, or like New York, where they
or
can
they
only
won't
build
or
up.
they won't build.
Or they won't build. Yep. Because again, you've got NIMBYism. So if you've got single family housing in your nice quiet little street in San Francisco and the area calls for multifamily development, a lot of that's getting swatted down, or they just bury them in permitting and rules and regs. A lot of those houses that burned down in California, they're still waiting on permits to rebuild it. It's been months and months and months, and they just can't move the paperwork fast enough. You've also got years and years of subsidizing demand. So you've got a lot of politicians promising to help make homes more affordable, but a lot of the solutions are actually just band-aid solutions. So a few good examples that you brought up, one of them was FHA mortgages,
Yeah.
where you're getting people into houses at 3.5% down payment that, 30 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. You have to save up for 20%. If you can't put 20% down, you can't afford it. And that was that. Well, they've got this idea where a single family house is not just something to aspire to, but it's actually a right. It's a human right. That's the American dream. And that it needs to be affordable to everybody. So they're subsidizing demand in lots of different ways with Section 8, with
And we
rent
want it to be
controls.
we do want it to be affordable to everybody.
Of course.
But it's not a right.
Right.
So there's a difference. Should it be fixed by the government to be supplied to people who just show up and need/want a home, or is it something that they have worked for, to save for, to purchase? Because people owned homes, and it's not like, oh, the only reason I was able to buy a home was because my mommy and daddy bought it for me with their money. The boomers, their parents didn't have nothing. Their parents grew up in the Great Depression. Okay. If you've got actual boomer parents, I don't mean just people that don't know how to program their new Alexa to run all their house app. I mean actual boomers who were born in the 50s. Their parents grew up in a day where, if you dropped a penny on the way home from work, the whole family would go outside and look for the penny, because you could buy a week's worth of food with a penny, right? That's
Sure.
there's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get my point.
Yeah, and there's also just
So,
to touch
but
on.
if you're able to save 20, but that generation, that whole economic theory of housing required saving 20% to buy that home. Inflation adjusted, $100,000 home that you needed 20% for at the time would be $20,000. Fast forward to today, say it's doubled. I think I made this point to you when we were in when we were chatting, put a 3x multiple on it. So now you need, if I said the same home is now $300,000. Well, to get 3.5%, you still need to save $20,000. That number hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, if you subsidize the demand,
Sorry, the math is wrong. Don't
or sure,
don't
yeah,
anybody.
yeah, we get the concept. But if you subsidize demand, what it does is it just drives the prices higher, I think is the point that you're getting at. So then the affordability just continues to be an issue because it's a short-term band-aid. So like another
Right.
short-term band-aid
So you
is
can never fix availability unless you go to 0% for everybody, and then you're just giving it away.
well, you have to fix the supply issue, right? If there's not enough supply, you can subsidize demand till you're, blue in the face. It's just going to drive prices higher if the market doesn't have enough supply. And that's the harder issue to fix, but that is the one that needs fixed, is the supply side of things.
Yeah, that's the one, and nobody wants to touch it because it's a long, complicated, dirty fix. It's much easier for a politician to go up there and say, we're going to give you money. We're going to tax the rich, which they're not going to do, to give you money, which means they're just going to print the money to do it, to go buy a house.
Yeah, and one of the ways that they do that
And
is
eventually that blows up because valuations get out of control. Houses are become too unaffordable for people until they get to be 40 years old.
yeah, and the more expensive it gets, the more rent controls become promised. So it sounds on the surface nice and gravy if you just say we're going to cap rent at $4,000 a month. But then what happens is developers decide that they don't want to build in that city anymore, because why would I build in that city when my profit is going to be capped? I can't ever increase rents. So even if my business gets more expensive to run, I don't have pricing control. There's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to go build in Texas, Arizona, and Florida instead, where they don't have rent controls. Yeah, and
Plenty of
there's
demand.
dozens and dozens,
Yeah.
yeah, plenty of demand, dozens of examples of this. Um, and Trump is trying to get the home builders going. The FHA has been pressing on the home builders, saying, "Hey, you guys own all these empty lots. Can you go please do something with them?" But the problem is because rates are so high and no
They
one's
can't
got
sell it.
money, they can't
Yeah.
sell it, so they don't want to build on it because they can't forecast whether or not they're actually going to be able to sell those houses in a
Well,
responsible way.
and their taxation liability goes up too, because
Explain that.
now you have, so an undeveloped lot has next to no value as an appraisal. But once you put a house on it, all of a sudden you have both the lot and the dwelling, which is appraisal. And the owner of that, the owner builder is, or developer, they now own that home. They can own it for any various number of reasons, and I'm sure there are some tax breaks built in, but at the core of the concept is that's not the house they live in, so they don't get the tax break on it for the homestead exemption. So they're paying taxes on a fully priced out home and not on an empty lot. So all these builders sitting on empty lots, and this is not something Trump can do anything about either, because it's all local taxes. It's all going to be state and county taxes.
Right.
So yeah, so there's no incentive for me to build a house that I have to sell at a loss, or build a house that I have to hold on to because no one can get financed.
Well, and obviously we've got housing that's locked right now. Say I want to move across town to a different part of Phoenix, and I've got a 3%. Based on the mortgage calculator that we just showed, you can't move. It doesn't make sense. So that brings us to this idea of portable mortgages. Um, I have a feeling that that's going to obviously unlock a lot of housing. I don't think that's me being an oracle saying that. People are going to move again, and that's going to be good for real estate agents to sell houses. But something tells me that that's going to have a second order effect.
Oh yeah, that absolutely is going to have an unintended consequence.
What do you think
But
that could be?
well, I mean, kind of by definition, we don't know what it's going to be. But I mean, if you just try to think forward, what is the incentive? The incentive is to own a home. So if you have a portable mortgage It's basically just a personal loan that you are guaranteeing against the property that you bought with it. But if you sell the house, you no longer have any property against that mortgage.
Yeah, you've sold the collateral.
Right. So do you have to give up the loan? I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of people saying, oh, well, if you sold the underlying loan, you shouldn't have to make, if you sold the underlying asset, you shouldn't have to make payments on it because you're having to make rent payments in the meantime.
Well, they'd have
But
to
now
qualify.
the
You'd have
bank
to
is
buy a
like,
house at the same time. Now, it might be different
I would
value.
think so. I would think
Yeah.
so. But there's a lot of times though that, you know, that's the plan, but the person you're buying the house from can't get out when you want to get in. So you end up renting for 3-6 months or whatever. Especially people moving across the country or, you know, things of that nature. Everything doesn't line up end to end where you would just maintain your payment against it. Like, it seems like it has a chance to work. And I would be interested in like a pilot program on it, or almost like ask an AI to build a quick like strategy video game on it and see who can gamify it and break the system, right? Or just find a way that they've figured out to hack the system, and they're now taking advantage. They're beating the rules. So it you know, just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad, but just because it's new doesn't mean it's going to work either. And it doesn't mean there's not going to have, like you said, a second order effect, which is worse down the line, which is probably going to be that it gets dovetailed with these 50-year mortgages. And so if someone takes out a mortgage when they're 35, they're still making this mortgage payment that's followed them their whole life until they're 85. And then what happens if you buy a nicer home, or you move into a more expensive home? You add to the mortgage, that the lifetime mortgage you took out.
Right.
Yeah, so
Especially if
it's
it's
just a
portable at
personal
the
loan.
same time. Like, you
Yeah.
took out a $500,000 portable, and then now you bought an $800,000 house because home prices have gone up. And maybe it's like a comparable house, but now you have a $300,000 gap in dollar value.
Yeah.
So how does the bank underwrite that? Like, who gets left holding the bag? Like, is the bank going to sit there and be like, okay, we'll find the extra $300,000 to give out at a below market interest rate?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, there you go. It makes it impossible to bank. You just nailed it.
Yeah. So we'll see what they end up doing with that. I think, 50-year mortgage, it does get people in the door. They can pay it down quicker if they want, but I think everyone has the gut feeling there that if you buy a house at 35, are you really going to have to be working till 85?
Right. Now, ideally, maybe the way, if we land it, it becomes a cultural. Well, and that didn't even work either. I was going to say it becomes like a cultural thing of, oh, it's like getting your first summer job, getting your 50-year mortgage. You're 23 years old. You've got you're basically still paying student debt. That's a
But
whole
that's
other
what the
issue.
FHA loan was for, right?
Yeah,
3.5% down. I did that. I didn't have that much money. Put down 3.5%, got my foot in the door, and I started renting out other rooms. And a lot of people are
smart.
taking advantage of that. Not in the way that I did, where they're house hacking, but you know, the thing that's become culturally pervasive is that housing always goes up and to the right, average 3% a year, too big to fail, rigged game, and it's always going to get bailed out. There's tons of leverage involved in it, both on the lender side with fractional reserve banking, and if you're a buyer, you control, $400,000 asset with maybe a $20,000 down payment. So you've got leverage on both sides, and people, in the zeitgeist, will call it, they'll call
Yeah,
it an
right.
investment.
But
They're looking at it through the
they're
lens
going
of
to
an
buy what they can
investment.
manage on their payment, right? They're
Yeah,
gonna do whatever they have to do to cover the down payment, and then they're gonna buy whatever the maximum that they can afford on their payment, just like they do on automobiles, and just like they do on houses now. So that's not going to change. The barrier to entry on these 50-year mortgages is still going to be, have you saved $20,000? And if you haven't, you're not going to buy a house. The only difference is now the prices of these houses are going to skyrocket because the sellers are going to say, well, you have 50 years to pay this off now, so I can charge you more for the house because your payment is still in this going to be the same number that it was when you had a 30-year mortgage.
Right. You're
Yeah.
not knocking down the principal and getting to a lower loan to value. Like your loan to value is going to be messed up for the first 15 years of that mortgage. You're not really going to make that much headwind. And the other thing too that I think drives
And no
demand
one,
is this inflation thing where
Yeah.
everyone says, you know, I've got sticks and bricks in the land. If they print more money, I've still got one house. One house is always going to equal one house. So it's almost people
that
will
is
buy a
true.
house as an inflation hedge because you can't raise rents on my mortgage.
That's true. And that has worked and continues to work. And that's
Does it work forever?
primary. I think it does. As long as governments keep printing money and inflation keeps happening, a house is still a house.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, houses, entry-level homes are far too nice now. They have all the amenities. They all have all the stainless steel appliances and the granite countertops and the crown molding. And, it's like the entry-level house now is like my parents' dream house when they were in their 40s.
Are you talking about like new builds entry level
Yeah.
or?
Yeah. New builds.
Okay.
When you find like a starter home neighborhood and you go in there, it is, all these houses are decked out. These are like top luxury apartment, but translated to a smaller home under 2,000 square feet.
Did you hear about these? I forget who it was, maybe Lennar, but there was an article that I saw about like $100,000 houses, and it was basically a tiny house. They were building this development of tiny houses because it's
That are
gotten
tiny
so
houses
bad.
are $100,000 now. Jeez.
Well, yeah, but they're like, it was a development of a bunch of them put all right next to each other on tiny lots for people who, they don't plan on having kids. They're not going to have 4 dogs. They don't need a backyard. They just want somewhere to lay their head and watch their Netflix at home. So they don't really need more than 1,000 square feet or don't want it, or maybe they're into this minimalism thing.
It's like
And
Tokyo apartments where it's like,
yeah,
yeah.
but the houses were a little bit comically sized, and it made me giggle a little bit. But it's also a little bit harrowing to see that that's the level of house that your average liberal arts degree person is going to be able to afford at this point.
They can't
'Cause,
afford $100,000 home.
I mean, some of them can if they manage their money well, but a lot of people are getting left behind.
Yeah.
I think that's the big takeaway, is that people are getting left behind here.
And I know a lot of people that will be watching this video might say, "Hey, Doug, you're being stupid. No one does that." And I'm just reminding you, people watching this are far more financially literate than the average person. Who, the point I was making earlier, they're buying what they can afford for their monthly payment,
Yeah,
and they're going to buy as much as they can for that.
it's a great point, and I think the car makers, Elon included, will tell you that most people are purchasing their cars based on the monthly payment. They're looking at current cash flows, and they're saying, "Can I afford that?" It's very simple, yes or no. And if they can't afford it, they get it. And it's sometimes as simple as that.
Well, a lot of times they'll use their trade as their down payment, so the only thing they're sizing out is their payment at all, right? So, and cars are worth a lot less than homes usually. Maybe not a new F-150, but
Well,
yeah, a new F-150
cars
is
are
the
a
same
little bit
price as a
different because
tiny home.
everyone knows that they're going to depreciate, whereas real estate, everyone sort of assumes the opposite, and that you're going to have appreciation, and that's sort of built into the model. What are your thoughts on Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac? Have you been following this at all?
No. I have followed it to the point where I knew Ackman was really about to go in heavy into Fannie and Freddie, and said, "Oh, that's interesting," and said, housing sector is not really for me as an investor. So
He's in it though. He's in it.
oh yeah, oh yeah, he is. Like I watch it, but I don't follow it enough. Like I have enough other investments going on that I'm trying to keep track of.
So I'm not invested in this anymore, but I've got a friend who's all in. Okay, 7 figures all in. Does one stock portfolio all in. Okay, so he's been keeping me very in the loop here. Would you
I'm
be
sure.
interested in 5 minutes of
Yeah,
what's
I'm
okay?
always interested in information. Go.
So here's the quick version of this, and don't come at me if I've got 1 or 2 details wrong or I skipped the part. Okay, this is the quick version for people who want
I've
to
got more
understand this at a
details
high
wrong
level.
than you did today. You're good.
So Fannie and Freddie, think of them as the insurance company to the banks.
Right.
They are guaranteeing the loans that the banks are making. And why they would do that is so that the mortgage-backed security market can be more liquid. If the government guarantees all the MBS paper, it brings down the risk level and therefore the interest rate. So it sort of works out better for everybody. Now, these 2 organizations, they're government sponsored entities, and they kind of got the death sentence after the great financial crisis. When everything went to crap, they got left holding a lot of the bag as the insurance company because you're the one who has to deal with that, especially when underwriting standards were really, really poor. So they got put into conservatorship by the federal government, and the federal government owns a lot of penny warrants. So if you look at the cap table of these 2 companies, they basically the common stock is 5%, maybe less, of the actual cap table of who owns these companies. Um, Being under conservatorship, it's almost wholly owned by Treasury. They're the
Right.
ones who have the penny warrants, and Treasury would have to be the one who takes them out of conservatorship. They don't need Congress; they just need Treasury and
Right. It's
FHA.
executive action. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So they can move on it. So what they're trying to do is a few things: is bring down capital requirements so that they can lend more. They're trying to bring them public again and uplist them back to the big board, and they're trying to clear up the cap table so that they don't have this issue. Now, what's been happening since 2010? Well, they've been making money. They started making money again starting around 2012, 2013. Obama did what was called the net worth sweep. So even though the companies were put into conservatorship earlier on, Obama took office, and not sure what led him to this decision. Maybe it was Larry Summers, I don't know. But they decided that any of the net income that F2, Fannie and Freddie, make, Treasury's going to just, thank you very much. Don't mind if I do. Now, these companies make a lot of money. These are massive, massive companies. They do about $20 billion of net income each per year. So
Mhm.
we're talking large amounts of money because they own 90% market share on insuring houses in the United States. This is a unique United States entity and phenomenon. Most other countries don't operate it this way. America's a little bit unique. So over the last 10 years, the federal government has essentially been stealing all of the net income from the common shareholders. They borrowed, or I should say the government forced them to take $190 billion in the bailout. They've already paid back over $300 billion of it. So in 2021, Trump wrote a letter to Senator Rand Paul.
Yeah.
And he said one of his biggest regrets of his first term is that he did not get these organizations out of conservatorship. And, he just got bogged down in too many things. He was inexperienced in his first term. He got caught up with all sorts of stuff like Russiagate. Um, he just didn't get around to it. We know that Trump loves a big deal. We know he's a real estate guy. And we know that he's got friends who supported his campaign, like Bill Ackman, who he'd love to repay for their loyalty. So that's where you get into the situation where he's actually trying to release them from conservatorship by doing a few different things. Lowering capital requirements, that's going to help them. They would clear up the cap table by issuing all these penny warrants and getting it out of the picture. But all of this is very much still up in the air, and they don't have a final solution yet. Bill Pulte's been doing all sorts of leaving all these Easter eggs everywhere, leaving breadcrumbs, but also saying, here's the disclosures, invest, know what you're invested in. He's basically, he's doing a big CYA while he's doing a campaign tour saying, we're expecting F2 to be released from conservatorship by either the end of the year or the first half of next year. And that's the case that Bill Ackman made as well on Twitter. He did
Right.
a big, long 60-page presentation on it and why he thinks that they can be released. So that's the very short version of it. I could probably talk for half an hour about how all that would unfold and all the things that they're trying to do to get them out of conservatorship, make them a public company. But they have a real opportunity if they're able to do that. If they're able to clear up the cap table and make it to where net income is coming back to the common shareholders, they get uplisted to the big board, they get rejoined back into the S&P 500, you get housing moving again and start circulating. There's a real opportunity there. But man, that thing was giving me some indigestion trying to hold it. So I don't hold it anymore. But I think it's a really interesting story to follow and keep an eye on. And I think it's going to have, we're going to hear a lot more in the next 6 months in terms of what their plan is. And I think that's also going to have some impact on the portable mortgages, the 50-year mortgage. It seems to be a comprehensive plan, all combining on.
Fannie getting rid of the with the 620 minimum credit score, and they're going to go to their own credit worthiness determination. So they're going to get rid of the FICO score completely, right?
So yeah, there's some headlines about that. What they're actually doing, even though they're getting rid of those standards, Fannie Mae and Freddie actually priced themselves out of those lower credit quality mortgages anyways. They want the banks
So
and primary
the subprime.
yeah, the subprime stuff, they price themselves out of that intentionally. So if you have private mortgage lenders who require PMI for a 580 FICO score, that rate might be at 6.8%, and then the Fannie Freddie rate might be 7.5%. They price themselves out of that. So they don't want a repeat of what happened in 2008, 2009. They're not going to go buck wild on dropping credit quality of, and remember, they also don't hold the paper either, right? They're insuring the MBS,
Right.
so they're actually selling the MBS to people who want to buy it, and that could be your insurance companies, that could be other banks, that could be all sorts of different things. That could be even corporations who want to buy MBS paper that they feel is safe. And we're really far away from ninja loans. We're really far away from collateralized debt obligations where you're stacking leverage on top of leverage on top of
Right.
leverage. It's nothing like that. But I do think that this story is interesting, and we're going to hear a lot more in the next 9 months. Whether like if you don't follow this story is going to start following you. It's going to pop up in a big way, I think.
Do you think the opposition party is just going to let them do something, which seems like it's just an executive action that someone who is running a company, it's just my job to do this, and I'm just going to do it, dot the I's, cross the T's, get the contracts done, and get this thing out the door and make it happen. It's kind of like if two companies were going to divest, right? And they're just like, we have a job to do. We have to just split these two entities in part. Okay. It's not political. It's just, we have a job to do. We have a lot of legal loopholes to cross. Do you think if it is going to be perceived as a win that the opposition party will let it happen? Or are they going to just fearmonger the heck out of everybody about it?
So you worry that the Democrats are going to put up a fight there just to not let the Republicans?
Well, they're going to put up a fight they're going to put up a fight everywhere.
Right. But for clarification of the question, you're worried that the Democrats are going to try and capture the issue, or?
Yeah. So this seems like something that should be a straightforward, non-political action. That
right,
the executive branch is just trying to make things happen that are supposed to happen when they're supposed to happen. Like, okay,
sure,
right? It's not political. It's making sure that the paychecks go out from Social Security on time, right?
Right.
It's not political. It's just a function of the government. but because Trump is involved, my sense is it's going to get political. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I mean, it
what kind
definitely
of
will.
compromises do we end up? You've seen the cartoon that's like the horse built by the government horse. Have you seen that
No, pull it up.
comic?
Yeah, and you're 100% right. It's something that should be happening, because it's time to happen. The balance sheet of those two organizations is radically improved. They're in a much better spot because again, even though they're in conservatorship and their net worth is getting taken, they're still adding to their balance sheet what's in their cash flows. So even if it's not net income, that cash flow is still coming onto their balance sheet. So their balance sheet has been getting stronger and improving every single year since, the great financial crisis popped the housing bubble. So, it definitely needs to happen. But anytime that you have large amounts of money that's moving around and you have one party that's trying to do something, that objective is going to get weaponized against them. So, like a good example is Democrats wanting healthcare for certain groups of people. That's just going to get weaponized. Hey, you want this? Well, I want you to not have it unless you give me something else. Everything gets weaponized.
Yeah. So that's a government horse.
That's perfect. So perfect.
Because this is what you have when you have one side that develops a plan. Basically, they develop a business plan, okay? And then they run into opposition, which forces them to do a whole bunch of things they didn't want to do, that they didn't count on having to do the thing they wanted to do. Right? This is like I went to the bank with a business plan for a laundromat, and I got approved for a loan, and I'm going to open a new laundromat. I go to open my new laundromat, and the government comes in and tells me I have to operate a Domino's pizza out of my laundromat. Well, I didn't buy any ovens. I didn't buy any cheese. I didn't buy any dough. I don't know how to cook things. I don't know how to comply with health and safety requirements. I wanted to run a laundromat. Now I'm stuck doing all this. So I think that's why, well, that goes back to the housing problem too. It's like you can't,
Yeah.
it's why we can't have nice things. It's why we can't have simple solutions to actual problems with anything the government touches, which is why AI works for advertising, because the government doesn't touch it very much, doesn't touch advertising.
Well, and just to keep it fair and balanced here, excuse the phrase, that's something that's happening on both sides, right? It's not just the Democrats that are promising things. Trump promised a specific set of files that I think were supposed to be released. That was a big part of his campaign. That he doesn't want to be such a big part of his presidency anymore.
Oh, it wasn't DJT who promised it. It was Kash Patel.
It's an extension of
that dude's mouth is now writing checks that his body can't cash.
Well, another one that's maybe a little bit more simple than that is, he said that he was going to bring grocery pricing down. Now, you and I and the audience that's financially literate knows that food prices don't come down; they just stop going up, right? I think there was a lot of folks who were expecting pricing to revert back to where it was pre-COVID, and that's just never going to happen.
That's never going to happen. Also, we have to import fruit in the winter in the northern hemisphere. So if we're charging tariffs on that, on things that we're importing, we're going to pay them in the winter. When we're eating our own harvest that we harvest domestically, we don't pay it anymore. So prices, in theory, could go down because the tariffs aren't going to be as large a component. But yeah, everything, all the fruit and berries that we're importing from South America right now, yeah, there's tariffs on all that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just use the Coast Guard a little bit more liberally and say, stick them up. We're not paying no tariff.
I think the Coast Guard's the ones making sure that the tariff has been paid before they allow it to enter the ports.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I think really interesting what's happening with some of the boats, though. We really don't want to have stuff coming over here that we don't want. But I think, is that all that we had on housing here before before we turn this into a full-on political
I mean,
podcast?
it just ties into that, right? Like
It
if we
does,
want
yeah.
to talk about housing as a market, you can't talk about housing you can't talk about education as a market
Right.
because the government is so, and we can't talk about healthcare as a market because the government is now so heavily involved in
Mhm.
those three industries. That's why the prices don't ever go down. That's why you never get more for less, because no one is ever competing the pricing and the margin out of it. The
Well,
government is sustaining it.
You know, Sham had a really good point. I don't know if you read 18 Theses. If you guys have not read 18theses.com, Sham Sanker of Palantir, the CTO, he started making this word really popular, monopsony.
Yep.
You know, everyone knows a monopoly when you have one business. A monopsony is when you have one buyer. That's typically going to be the government. So if you think about contracting and acquiring weapons, there's one buyer of that, right? The government has a monopoly on the military. You could call it a monopsony because there's one buyer. So other good examples that you pointed out, education is another good one. You know, pricing on rockets doesn't go down. It just doesn't. They're the only game in town.
Another really good example of that is here in Texas, on the Gulf Coast, is windstorm insurance. So I live a few blocks off of Galveston Bay, which is an extension of the Gulf of America. Almost said Gulf of Mexico, but didn't. Caught myself. I have to pay essentially one extra. The amount ends up being one extra mortgage payment per year, or not mortgage payment, but like the whole everything per year, for something called TWIA, Texas Wind and Insurance, or something like that. The reason I have to pay Texas, the reason that this exists is because after Hurricane Ike and some of the other hurricanes in the 2000s, the private insurers raised their rates to cover their losses and, you know, anticipated future losses, future payouts.
Right. They started charging the market price so that they didn't go
They
insolvent.
started charging the market price. Exactly. Well, that started pricing people out of being able to buy all the homes. So the government stepped in and said, no, we will offer our own insurance.
Mhm.
And they priced it so low that all the private companies packed up and left. So now the government has what they call a rainy day fund, but it's $20 billion.
Yep.
If the city of Houston gets smashed by a hurricane, $20 billion is not going to be nearly enough.
Well, Florida has a
fund is-
wind pool as well too.
Yeah, that fund is going to be completely insolvent. No one is going to get paid, but at least they were able to keep low payments. So the insurance you've been paying for the whole time you've owned your home becomes worthless because the state, unlike the federal government, can't print the money. So we have a federal flood insurance program. The feds can print all the flood money they want.
Right.
But this is wind insurance, so the national flood doesn't apply.
Well, I think they're banking on the federal government bailing them out. So, like, another good example of this
They
is,
might be, but
well, and
if
we
the
can do a
wrong
whole,
administration is in power,
we can do a whole episode on insurance. In a prior life, I was an insurance underwriter. And you know, I could tell you
we do need
horror
to
stories.
do that.
We'll
But
do an
anyway,
insurance. But let me hit on this real quick. So
Okay.
California earthquake. 9 out of 10 houses in California do not have earthquake insurance. The most earthquake-prone state in the country, most houses do not have earthquake insurance. Why is that? It costs about the same amount as your housing premium. So if your house premium for everything except earthquake is $3,000 a year, and you want earthquake insurance, now you're looking at $6,000 a year. That's generally about what it is. So
Yeah.
most people don't pay it. It's not required by the mortgage lenders, and there's just not really much that you can do about that. So what's going to happen eventually is some earthquake, hopefully not, but some earthquake's going to come through,
It'll
and
happen.
the federal government will have to bail it out because California is just such a massive state, and I think they're kind of banking on that, so they haven't actually fixed the issue because they have the federal government put.
Well, how's that working out for fire?
I think they got paid for that. A lot of it they got peer pressured into it. They had to send help.
Well,
Don't-
like I said, that we haven't seen them build anything. So
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
Well,
you'll have
that's
the
a
same
separate
problem
issue.
with a massive earthquake. You'll have the same problem.
Yeah,
Have
and
a
that
whole bunch
goes
of
back
stuff
to
get
the
knocked down.
permitting, red tape, construction codes, all of that stuff. I mean, it's in certain states it's almost impossible to build a house, but I think
But anyway, I had used my local insurance thing that I have firsthand
mhm,
issue with as the example of when the government gets involved in a private market, the private market can no longer compete.
right, right. I think that wraps housing. Here's the real
Yeah.
steak and potatoes. I said steak and potatoes for housing. I should have said it for this one.
No, this is yeah.
Lead us off here. So why? Or I guess I could lead it off.
So let's give everybody a little bit of a heads up here. Okay, what are you about to walk into? Okay,
So we're about to walk into the probably 6-month summary of our conversations that we've been having on Waymo versus Tesla and why we both believe there can be multiple winners. We're both analyzing this in a very friendly but competitive way and trying to figure out who's going to be the primary winner here and which company can deliver both the technological solution, um, because they're obviously taking very two different approaches to the solution: lidar versus non-lidar, mapping versus free roam, um, large scale production versus um, partnering with OEMs like Jaguar, Zeekr, um, and the business results that end up following that. And I have concerns about the promises that have been made versus the promises that have maybe not been kept. Whereas you drive a Tesla, you see it getting better every day. You think it's an inevitability, and you're a believer.
yeah. So for as much as everybody who's been watching and think that Dougie and Austin agree on everything, this is one where we generally fundamentally argue back and forth almost.
It's a good time.
If there's a headline for one company or the other, one of us is DMing the other about dunking on the other a little bit. But yes, so we also need to preface this with Austin has never ridden in an FSD Tesla.
No, I have once.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You have now?
Once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, once.
Yeah. It
Okay.
was over in Europe. It was in
Oh, okay.
Paris.
Okay.
He didn't have it on the whole time, but he did have it on. They don't really follow the lane line restrictions over there. They're more of a suggestion lanes.
Well, as I understand it, that's how the human drivers drive as well.
Yeah, and this gets to the crux of it. Do you want to drive like a human or do you want to drive better than a human?
Well, so what's the
I believe both can
definition
do.
of driving better than a human? Following the rules better than a human or performing better than a human? Because, for example, an F1 driver, if we put FSD in an F1 car, it's a better physical performer to operate the vehicle, probably better than a human.
Sure.
But is it going to follow the rules better? You could probably tell it to, but that's not how you trained it. So
Yeah, and I think both companies will successfully, and I think already have proven successfully that they're safer than most human drivers. But I guess where my opinion really splits off is, comments that you hear from, Tesla management saying, well, why would we use LiDAR? Humans don't have LiDAR, so why would our car? Which I think is kind of a silly argument because if you can be better than a human driver and have additional tools and sensors that make you see things around the corner that a human would never be able to see and have reaction times that a human would never be able to have. Like those are valuable reasons as to why you're going to have much safer driving out of these autonomous cars. And
Okay.
I don't buy the argument that having multiple
I
sets
am
of
I
sensors is
am
going to
not
somehow confuse.
unsympathetic to that point of view.
Yeah,
As a software developer, though, or in a former life, I can tell you, when you have two, you don't have a way to know which one is correct. When you have two different things that tell you something different, when you have one sensor that tells you yes and another sensor that tells you no, you don't have a way to determine which one is correct.
but they do. They've been successfully doing it because you could have,
You
and
can
again,
guess, you can make a probabilistic determination, but you have no way to know.
sure,
So
but neither does the Tesla because it's still
furthermore,
vision only. It's still kind of
furthermore,
probabilistically driving.
all of the roads, the environment the vehicle operates in is designed to be operated using vision only, with only two eyes looking forward on a neck that can pivot and that can use mirrors occasionally, if ever. The whole system operates on that. And then it's then processed by a computer that has about a 1/3 of a second latency for input and another 1/3 of a second latency for output. So in theory, operating with 8 cameras and processing at not just small fractions of the time that the human brain and the nervous system and the musculoskeletal system can react. You're talking about thousands of the same amount of time that a computer can process the data that it's getting and then send controls to whatever system is. I mean, you only have a few controls, right? Accelerate, brake, left, right on the steering wheel.
Right. There's only
Yep.
a few inputs that you can do. Yeah.
Right. You only have a few options for output, right? So if you have 8 simultaneous inputs and you're able to process those and you're able to process it hyper quickly and send the outputs hyper quickly and get far better reaction time, does LiDAR, which again, rewind 5 years, the LiDAR was far more expensive as well.
Right. That gets lost a lot too, is the decreasing cost of LiDAR, because we'll get to the business here at the tail end of it, but a lot of people say, the car's too expensive, they'll never make money. We'll get to that.
It was never about making it was about being able to sell the car at all.
Right, and having it work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, we can deliver you the same functionality essentially without the LiDAR as with the LiDAR. So, you probably would never, the average driver would never know the difference between when the LiDAR is the decision maker versus the vision. But the LiDAR system is going to cost you, $30,000 more on the vehicle. That there is a certain risk reward point where you fall under the curve or above the curve, right? And one thing that Tesla was trying to do is bring a car to the market that could do it, versus what Waymo was trying to do is develop a prototype that would work.
Yeah, so I think they're taking two different approaches at it. Elon is solving for cost first, and then he's trying to solve the problem because he's kind of committed
he's got to do
that.
both at the same time because he's got to make a car he can sell.
Right. So he made
Waymo's
that
not selling
first,
cars.
and now he's trying to solve the self-driving, whereas Waymo said, let's solve the problem first, and then we'll figure out how to produce at scale and get the cost down. And I just want to share this real quick. This is the cost of LiDAR coming down over time at a massive rate. I mean,
Yep. Hey, you know why? Because government's not regulating it.
I have a feeling we're going to be sneaking that one in as many chances as we can get. But yeah,
that looks like the cost curve of 42-inch flat screen televisions.
Yeah, now, so where my issue comes in with a lot of the Tesla people, particularly on Twitter, which is an Elon-owned platform, you have all these different accounts that are just quite frankly that, they're well, I don't want to call them the cult, even though that is the accurate word, but they're very theological about not you, but a lot of the accounts there. They make their entire personality about Elon, and they really believe every single word that he says. When I think there's sufficient evidence to say that not just on timetable, but some of the claims that he makes aren't true. So you could go through the timetable of him saying in 2016 that Teslas would be able to drive themselves in a year, and then again in 2019, and then again
And
in 2021. And
and
there's been progress made.
for all we know, they were able to.
I mean, but they
But we don't
weren't
know what they
doing
could
it.
get through regulators. We don't know what they could get in production. We don't know what. I mean, the average, I think, hardware 3 vehicle has essentially the computing power, I believe, like of an Xbox One X or Xbox One, like whatever the Xbox One like highest level was. Okay.
Okay.
It has significant graphics processing built in. You don't think of that as a very advanced computer system, but it is a hyper tuned system.
Well, how does
So,
that tie in with the regulators?
okay.
'Cause I don't think that's been what's been slowing them down.
No, I'm just saying that's the additional hardware that they put in every vehicle, and they were able to keep that. Yeah, it's maybe $1,000 worth of additional processing, and then you also had the additional sensor stuff, which they have had ultrasonics and other stuff in the past, which they've dropped and let go by the wayside. Because they just realized that they weren't getting value out of it. That they weren't
But I guess my
getting out of
concern
vision.
has been that
So
the claim
I
is
say all
that
this
we're
to
always
say,
one software update away. That's kind of where I feel like we're in this perpetual state of one software update away. And 12 comes out, and then he says that 13 is going to be the one that does it, and then 13 comes out, and it's still not quite there, even though it is getting better. And then he says 14 is going to be sentient. He just makes claims that, quite frankly, they're not quite right. And then some of the evidence that I see around is the take rate on FSD subscriptions is not quite what you'd want it to be if the
that's
experience
true.
really is next level. And I believe it will be at some point. But if the experience is as great as everybody says it is, and as the people on FinTwit proclaim that it's world changing and you'll never go back, why don't we see more subscriptions? Why do we still see the safety driver in Austin? Why won't any of the regulators, like in California, why won't they let them actually operate a proper robo-taxi? It's basically an
Well,
Uber
that's
right
not
now
hard
in
to figure
California.
out.
Well, I mean, but they're letting Waymo do it, right? And Tesla's supposed to be the one
Yeah.
with more miles driven because
Yep.
they have much more
But we
cars.
know why they're not letting them do it in California.
Well, and that's part of the problem, right? Is that he made
They're
himself a target.
getting SpaceX banned in from launching out of Vanderburg in California.
Right,
I
but
mean,
that's a result of how Tesla
that's
management acted.
that's a whole other issue but if you bring that up as that, but it's a little disingenuous to say that is them failing to make a technological jump when that is a political risk. That's not
Right, but that's also not the case in Austin, right? So Austin is still
Yeah.
not open to the public. It's invite only, and it's been 3 months now?
Yeah.
So
Which is so how long was Waymo in like beta mode before its wide release?
so
Before it operated in all 50 states, how long was Waymo in beta mode?
well, so it was they started rolling it out in 2017, 2018 to like employees and invite only, and then it actually launched commercially in October of 2020.
Okay, so 3 years.
Yeah,
Okay. I expect this to be about the same.
sure. But then you could argue, like, did Tesla move, or
They moved and I will
they were
grant
too
you
slow and they lost their
they
first
moved
mover
too slow.
advantage.
They
Yeah.
lost their advantage.
Because now
2
you've got
years
other
ago,
entrants into the market. You've even got Chinese players now who are
2
coming
years
to
ago
take their lunch money.
they were very far ahead. Even right now, they're still so far ahead. Every weekend that I go launch rockets, Tesla drives me from Houston to College Station or from Houston to Austin. And it takes highways, it takes sideways. I just put it in, I just pop in the address and I just chill.
Right. And it's a huge life improvement, but what I think gets them over the hump is, of course, being able to text and not having to be
Yep.
hounded by the machine. Being able to like sit in the back seat and not have to
Dude,
worry about it. That's a game
they
changer.
could turn that on right now.
But
I
why
mean,
haven't they? Like we've been hearing that for like
Ford
years.
has hands-free Blue Cruise and they don't monitor your attention. Tesla does it because there is political risk that they would have. You know, if a Ford gets in a wreck because someone's on hands, not just hands-free, but hands-off Bluetooth Blue Cruise, and they weren't paying attention to anything going on in the cabin and they got in a wreck, it would make, page 7 of the local newspaper.
Sure.
Okay. If a Tesla runs over a baby squirrel and it's on FSD and the person didn't have both hands on the wheel and was paying attention at the same time, it's going to be on every clickbait site in the universe.
Well, but again, and I hate to keep going back to this, but management has brought that upon themselves because when you make yourself
It's
a national
their up
figure
and
like
down,
that,
right? Yeah.
well, you make yourself a national figure, a
Oh, that was
polarizing one
before
at
even the
that.
election. That was even before the election.
Yeah,
Because
but you make
Elon gets clicks.
yeah, even I'm not even talking about just politically, but yeah, he was his own salesman, right? Tesla didn't really advertise like your
Yep.
traditional Fords and GMs on
I think
TV.
that's a mistake.
But it helped. If you look at their sales and marketing, it's a lot lower of a percentage of for Tesla than it is for Ford, GM, Stellantis.
Yeah.
And he was able to leverage that to grow faster, and it brought him lots of really
He's the
loyal fans.
Dave of Tesla's Wendy's. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Dave.
No, I did
He was
not remember Dave.
he was the owner of Wendy's.
Sure.
The owner creator of Wendy's, and he was like the main guy in the commercial. It was like Papa John doing his own commercials. Okay.
No, Charles Schwab was that way too.
Yeah, Schwab was that way, right? So Tesla is, like I said, he's the Dave to Tesla's Wendy's. At some point, he has to let people do things. Did you see the changes they made today to FSD?
Tell me about it.
Okay, I got the email today as I was driving home and saw the email come through. I was not riding in my Tesla today. The wife had the Tesla. And of course, the first thing I did was text Amit about it. Let me pull it up and I can share.
The email?
Yep. I mean, it's from Tesla marketing to to Tesla owners, but they're adding it to the refer and earn. So you can now have a referral code for people taking an FSD test drive.
Okay.
And this is bullish to me because now, Tesla owners get $15 in Tesla credits when you refer someone who takes a demo drive of with FSD. And if they buy the car, you get $250.
Okay.
If they buy the car. If they buy it with FSD, you get $500.
Now, this has always been sort of how Tesla's done their marketing,
Yeah.
either through just the
So
voice, just through Elon directly, or
here's the big
through word of
change.
mouth.
So here's the big change today. So that was all nice, right? But that's like, okay, well, send your friends to go blah blah blah, and you get $15. So the whole referral code thing has always been a bit one-sided. Okay, well, what do you get at? Well, what does the person I refer get out of it? Here's the kicker. They get 3 months of FSD now when you get the car, which is something I feel like they should have had from the get-go, but that's huge.
Well, they did that. About a year ago? They gave everyone FSD for free for like a month. I don't know why they got rid of that.
And they had like a 15% take rate on that. It wasn't like people who drove their car, and most of them still did not know they could have turned it on.
That's true too. Yeah, you just have lack of knowledge. But you would think that people who are buying Teslas, is that not a primary consideration for if I ever bought a Tesla, that would be the reason that I buy it.
Yeah. No, most people didn't buy it for FSD. They bought it because it was an EV because they were trying to be earthy, crunchy
Hmm.
hippies. And then you get 500 off if you and so the person you refer now gets a $500 coupon if they purchase a Model 3 or Model Y with the FSD. So when we bought ours, I included the full price of FSD in the vehicle. So I don't like that it's not tied to the account. I don't like that it's tied to the vehicle, but when I go to sell the car, it has FSD attached to it forever.
Really?
Yep.
So if you buy another Tesla, you have to repurchase FSD.
Yep. But I also financed it into the price of the car. So I don't pay $100 a month.
Okay. Can I get into a few bones to pick?
Sure.
So one of the bones to pick here is that they call it FSD when it says right on their website that it's not because they don't take liability for the crash. So if you fall asleep on your way to College Station and the Tesla crashes, legally it says right on their website in the disclosures and everything, and their lawyers will argue, we told Dougie to pay attention. This was his own fault. We don't take liability for it. They haven't achieved L4 status. And then separately, there's a bit of a hypocrisy going on with the geofencing, particularly on the robotaxi side, where Elon himself.
That's something separate.
Right. Yeah. That's why I said separately.
What's geofencing for owners? There's no geofencing.
Right. Right. But I guess, to call it FSD and not have it be L4 and not take any of the liability, I have a hard time squaring those two things together. Because if you actually did have full self-driving, and they're charging for full self-driving, right? And they market it as such, but then they don't want to take any of the liability. Whereas Waymo, I think this is why I'm more confident in Waymo, because they've already removed the driver. They have commercial insurance on it. So they have an insurance company willing to back this and say, hey, we've underwrote the risk and we feel confident that this thing's going to perform well. And they've got the regulators on board and they take liability for it. So if I jump in a Waymo and I go to the bar and it gets in an accident on the way there and it was the Waymo's fault, that's Google's problem, right? If
Mhm.
if you do the same thing in your Tesla, it's the vehicle owner's problem. I think that's a really important distinction. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, so the distinction of whether or not the self-driving system is going to be liable for damages. So if the Tesla makes a mistake while it's driving, while it's in robotaxi mode, self-driving mode, whatever you want to call it, Tesla is not liable. You are still the operator of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Whereas Waymo, that's not the case at all. They tell you not to sit in the driver's seat. I tried to sit in the driver's seat once. Support called me and they said, "Get out. You can't sit there."
This was actually on was it the earnings call or investor day that they just had? Somebody asked a question to Elon specifically about, it was it was the shareholders meeting. And someone specifically asked him about insurance. And I mean, the guy laid out the case pretty well, saying, and he went on to say that actually the Tesla, to get your Tesla insured costs more than a gas powered vehicle,
Right.
because Tesla's not reporting, and it hasn't worked with insurers yet to get you discounts for, and this would be something that I think people would jump on, if you got discounted rates for all the miles you drove in FSD.
Yeah, but they have to prove it out in the actuary tables because that's how insurance works. Is they have to prove it
For
first,
sure.
and they can rate for it.
Well, the first thing they've got to do is start having conversations. Like, or Tesla is also one of the Mag 7s. Presumably, they could handle a lot of this cost themselves.
Yeah, they could self-insure. And I think I don't want to miss the forest through the trees here. If they actually solve this thing, they get L4 and it performs really well. Yeah, you're going to have a massive deflationary effect on insurance premiums just because people won't be getting in accidents nearly as often. Um, and I think Steve talks about this with the robo-taxi operation itself is you're going to have commercial cars, taxis that can't really get insurance right now. And one of the reasons that because you're driving for pay, so that's an exclusion on most auto policies.
Yep.
So that's a conundrum. But one of the reasons that Teslas are more expensive, um, actually two reasons. They have
And
more sensors.
you can still sign up to be an Uber driver and not have insurance coverage.
Correct. However, so your liability would still apply, but when someone hits you or you hit somebody else, your collision and comp is not going to apply because there's an exclusion in there that
Yeah.
says if you're driving for Domino's Pizza or you're driving for Uber, we're not covering it. This is specifically forbidden because it increases their risk level.
Yep.
So they intentionally go out of their way to exclude those things. But some of the other reasons that Teslas are more expensive on the insurance side for now is you have more sensors on the front and the back of the vehicle. So fender benders are the most common accident, especially now with everybody texting and driving. You don't even see brake marks anymore. You just end up with, someone staring down and then boom, there's the car, and it's like, holy smokes. And we know that that's a problem. You also have outside of the sensors, the fact that it's a unimold car. That helps them produce cars faster and cheaper. It's a really good manufacturing technique, but when you end up with damage to the frame, you can't just fix that part of the frame. The whole car gets totaled. So that's
Yep.
what drives the rate higher.
My insurance guy explained it to me like this as well, because, and this was during COVID too. So we were still, everybody was talking about supply chains. So this may not apply as well now, but what I was told is and it's this varies state by state too, but at least in Texas, there is a certain amount of time that the insurer can take to repair your vehicle. If they cannot repair your vehicle in a certain amount of time, they have to total it. So you may have $500 worth of damage, but if they can't get the part to repair the car in 30 days or whatever, they have to total it, because you can't just they can't just take your car and hold on to it forever waiting to get a part. Right.
And that's also just a bad experience. If you're an
yeah.
insurance agent, you don't want to sell that policy to someone who gets in an accident and then 6 months later they're still driving a rental.
Yep. And so as a result of both Tesla not having the massive network of dealerships and parts, on the commercial off the shelf third party part manufacturers networks that the big three and the Japanese automakers have, right? Tesla does not have that infrastructure. It is still an infant in the automobile industry, right?
But again, that makes it cheaper for them to go to market and sell cars, not having there's a lot of dead weight in dealerships. Yeah. I'm sure everybody agrees on that.
Yep. But because they don't have that massive support infrastructure and maintenance infrastructure behind them, their lead times on replacement parts is very long, and that causes some of these just timeouts on whether or not they total a vehicle for what is essentially minor damage. So you have a lot more Teslas actually totaled for things that probably shouldn't be, because the repair takes too long, or to get the replacement parts takes too long, not because the cost of the repair exceeds the value of the vehicle.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. One of the other things I wanted to get to was the sort of the economics of this. Obviously, software. If you do finally get that magical update, level 4 solved, think of the cars as the hardware, and then you get recurring SaaS revenue from FSD. I think that's the bull case that everybody sees. But if you look at the valuation, I just have a hard time squaring how you actually, within a reasonable amount of time, end up getting to the market cap that they're at. I feel like it's already priced in for that growth. Um, and then the complaint that you hear from the other side, from the folks who want to complain about the unit economics of Waymo. We've already talked about the LiDAR, but one of the other things too is that you're actually just getting less capital intensive. So right now they've got the expensive car. Next up is going to be the cheaper car. So you've got like your Zeekrs and your Hyundais. And then the step 3 is going to be just using Waymo Driver as a platform with the OEMs. So they've got a partnership with Toyota, and the idea there is that you're going to have software like margins similar to Tesla. It's just that Tesla has that bigger install base already, whereas Waymo is going to be more supply constrained in both the sensors, the LiDARs, the parts, and they're going to have to navigate what could be OEM hell. Whereas Tesla, they're vertically integrated. If they want to produce 1 billion more cars, they can do that. Elon's shown that he can ramp manufacturing, so he can grow the install base bigger.
He's often said the value of Tesla is the factories, not the cars.
Right. Now, if you have 20 million cars that can end up producing $100 a month for FSD product because it's that good and it's a luxury that people will not want to get rid of, I'd love to do that. I'd pay $100 a month and buy a new Tesla tomorrow if they came out and said that I could drive to work and eat a salad in the back seat. Like, that would be fantastic, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. But that's not where we're at yet. And how long does it take people to actually adopt that once it happens?
I think we're going to see it in China first.
Did you want to talk about Baidu?
China being much more forward-looking. No, I mean Tesla China.
Okay.
China being much more forward-looking technologically wise, and they're also smart enough and brutal enough to not let a little thing like human rights or lawyers get in the way of engineering achievements.
Yeah, how valuable is human life anyways?
Yeah, well, they're willing to let a few people get killed along the way to get the technological achievement.
Sure, the greater good, if you will.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, they want safe, reliable, self-driving too, but they're not going to have someone sue Tesla China for $400 billion because they got in a car wreck. Right. Like, because that's going to happen.
Litigious.
Right. That's going to happen in the United States. Like, somebody's going to get in a car wreck. I mean, the timeline's
it's already happened in Florida, right? There's a lawsuit.
Yeah, it's already happened. And somebody is going to sue, not for what they would sue you or me for if there was a death. Yep. Right? They're going to sue Tesla as if they are personally going to raid Elon's piggy bank.
Yeah. They'll call it reckless endangerment.
Yeah, and they're going to name Elon Musk. Yeah,
where
they would never do that.
Damages.
They would never do that on any other car company.
Yeah,
you would never get the CEO named, but you're going to get Elon named there.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're going to see it work first in China because that litigiousness just does not exist.
But here's the thing: even given the litigiousness, though, Waymo's making progress. So
Waymo's making great progress.
Yeah.
A year ago today, I did not see Waymo being where they are today. I first saw Tesla being further forward than they are, and I saw Waymo being further back.
Now, the real test here is how fast can they actually launch these cities, because they've announced a lot of cities and it feels like they're mapping them all out. I think 2026 and the first half of 27 is going to be huge for them, because they've announced Miami, DC, San Antonio, Nashville, Vegas, now Denver. They've got, right now it's just 5 cities. Make that 5 cities: Austin, Atlanta, SF, LA, Phoenix. They've announced San Diego. They've announced that they're going to do Orlando. They're going to do Miami. They're going to do DC. They're going to do London. They're going to do Tokyo. So they've announced like 15, 20 cities, but they're operational in 5. I'd like to see them actually, put cars in those cities and get those network
Well,
effects
your
running.
problem with those cities is that it is still the Waymo geofence model of if we haven't fully mapped it, we can't go there.
But that mapping. So here's my thing on mapping.
And
So
my Tesla can drive on a road that no one else has ever driven on before. That's under construction today, and we get detoured.
right now, so here's the some of the conversations that we've had about mapping. My argument has always been, you map it once, then it's done. You don't have to worry about it again. It's not like you have to keep going back and mapping it every single year. And the majority of miles are being driven within those major metropolitan areas that they're going to operate in. So if you could think of all the miles driven in the United States as a pie chart, the huge part of the pie chart is going to be within those major metro areas. So once it's mapped, it's not a problem. So I don't think this free roam ability, it's useful for personal autos if you want to go on the road trip, but for most driving, daily commuting, taxis, I don't see that. It slows them down, but long term, I don't think it's an issue. And you also see,
It's how
Elon
I
says,
would have
if you don't,
solved the problem.
hold on real quick. If you have Elon talking about, if you don't have a geofence, you don't have a real, a real full self-driving, right? He said that,
Yeah,
and
he's
then the
right.
way that they roll, yeah. I'm not sure about
Don't
that. I think,
don't confuse Cybercab with
okay. So how's it
what
different?
FSD is capable of doing. Because Cybercab is trying to get approved to operate driverless. They've got to go through a whole heaping amount of regulation that I can't even begin to comprehend to prove that they can operate that.
So isn't
Now,
that an advantage
the
for Waymo, because
thesis a
they've
few
already
years
checked those
ago,
boxes?
yeah, they're ahead. They have first mover advantage there. They've made those moves. Like, they operated in Austin for how long before Tesla got there?
I think just about a year and a half, not that long. Phoenix
Okay.
was the first market.
So I mean, I expect it to take about a year and a half to prove to the regulators that you can operate without a driver.
So my question is, why can't they do that with all the data that they have from your car, from Amit's car, all the Tesla drivers?
From the
Why is
two
that
plus
data?
million vehicles on the road.
Yeah, so why can't
Yeah.
they use that data to validate the safety? That's where my concern comes in.
Because first of all, I mean, I say it's never been done before because it's never been done before.
Sure.
Right. And if you say, well, Waymo just did it. Well, they did it a different way.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the things that Waymo would have done and protocols that may have been established to validate Waymo's solution do not apply to Tesla's solution. So they have to design how they're going to approve it to begin with. So you have to work with the regulators to come up with what they even want to choose to regulate.
And that's part of the game. And that's why
So
I'm not sure I believe
the
in
old
one
thesis
software
Elon had
solution.
of we can push a button and push a software update and the whole fleet is suddenly autonomous. While that is true, the regulatory environment will not allow it.
Right.
Physically, the vehicles can do it.
Yeah.
So you have, in theory what exists versus in practicality what exists.
Yeah, like
so
people think that the vehicles are the bottleneck, and I don't think the vehicles are the bottleneck. I think the regulatory is the bottleneck.
It's the regulatory. And it's not like this is a large regulatory body either that has all the resources from the state to approve it, right? That's not the case. This goes on to touch on what the All In guys were talking about last week. I haven't watched this week yet, but they were talking about last week when they were discussing having a single AI regulatory framework and having the feds preempt all the states. So like it would just be impossible to operate 50 different
Well, I agree with that
regulatory
approach.
environments on AI. So same thing with full self-driving, which coincidentally is also AI. You need one authority. So let Texas, Colorado, Georgia, whatever these cities like Atlanta, let them kind of figure out what the framework needs to be, that pass that off to the feds, and then you have one regulatory body to handle it.
Sure. And where that gets messy though, and I agree with that approach, by the way. I don't think there should be 50 different sets of rules. But the problem is that there currently already is.
Yeah, there's 50 different driver's licenses.
50 different Department of Labors, 50 different, insurance rule sets.
Regimes. Yep.
Yeah, because that's all done at the state level. So I don't know. Maybe they open up that
But
that
national
bottleneck.
national highway standards apply in all 50 states.
Right. Right.
And the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. I mean, all they have to do is say, oh, the FSD of all the companies is going to fall under the purvey of the Commerce Clause, and okay, well.
And do you think they could win a court case like that and just sort of bully all the states into making that happen?
Well, I mean, I think it was Marbury versus Madison.
Well, I mean, in terms of
one
applying
of the first, or could have been Ogden. I could have that confused with Ogden versus.
Well, I know that it's
whatever they got that name
precedent. I
was.
just don't know if it's been applied to cars at this point, because you have certain states like California have different ways of making the auto manufacturers design the cars.
Yep. That was another thing All guys said was stupid. But that is manufacturing of the vehicles. That is not operating the vehicles.
Well, even something like insurance limits. So every state has different insurance limits.
True, but there's no like one state that says, oh, you only need one tail light.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they standardize it.
So there are standards for vehicles to be street legal in the United States. Now that there may be state regulations on top of it, but there's going to be. I don't foresee the feds allowing individual states to supersede their authority on that. They'll let a state run out ahead before they decide to do it. I mean, we saw this a lot with like crypto as well, right? Like different states had different rules for crypto.
Right. Or even gambling. I think gambling's a really good one. They opened it up in a few different states and sort of in legal marijuana. They opened it up in a few states. They sort of sussed out the situation, and then they're like, okay,
that's still illegal. It's still illegal in the United States, but
federally, yeah. But like, it's sort of spreading across all the different states as they get more and more feedback. Like everybody was sort of looking at Washington and Colorado there for a second, or on the gambling side. I forget even who was one of the first states to do the gambling, but once a few states did it successfully, the rest of them sort of fell in line. So maybe you have something like that.
Yeah.
What else did you have?
That's what I feel like the timeline is going to be for Robotaxi. Is they're going to have to prove it out. And then there's also the consideration of it is invite only right now, but even then, because it's such a small service, it's not like they're going to put 2,000 cars in the fleet to service Austin, right? Because you have a demand curve, and they have to meet this. They have to have the supply to meet the demand, but at the same time, Like so those both of those have to kind of grow together, right? As you're bringing a new app online, this is like a startup for an app, right?
Yeah, but I guess I imagine
Now
if you've
you
actually
would
got L4, that demand is going to show up almost overnight. Just because it's a superior experience. Like you can look at Waymo and SF, and everybody there wants a Waymo because it's way better of an experience. Minus, it taking the side.
are they running on their own app there? Or are they running through
Yeah,
Uber?
they're on their own app. So they run on Uber in Atlanta and in Austin, but the California cities and Phoenix, they've got their own app, right? It's
They've
not
got
that
their own
hard to
app. Okay.
develop the app.
Yeah, I mean, and Tesla already has an app. Like every Tesla owner has it.
Right.
So you have that built-in install base already. But so when people say, "Oh, you're only in this small area," well, we only have a small amount of demand as well, or we're trying to pack all of our demand that we're testing on in one area
Right.
and keep that as dense as possible, so we're getting a good amount of data every day. If they opened it up to the whole state of Texas, then they would have to bring not a million, but they'd have to bring thousands of vehicles in the fleet online to be able to match, Houston and Dallas and blah blah blah, right? So they're operating with a geofence because they're trying to have a artificially high demand in one area to make sure that they're getting data so that they can work with the regulators on it. And
Sure.
when we saw them go do the mapping, in my mind, and I know what you had intimated you thought was, oh, look, they're having to do all the LiDAR mapping anyway. And what I was saying is, oh, look, they're having to go validate because Waymo already did it this way. So they're having to go prove to the regulators that, okay, when we collect this data, that the way that our AIs are working, we can play it forward and you can watch it run against this digital twin that we've got the scans on, and you can just see how it works. So
Sure.
so we can validate that our solution works as well against the one you're already familiar with and that you've already worked with.
Just the issue though is if that process takes a
If it takes
year,
too
year
long,
and a
they lose
half,
their advantage.
yeah, and that time, time
And
is
they've
money.
already, yeah. Yep.
They lose not only just the first mover advantage of other entrants coming in and gaining market share and then having to fight that battle later, but they also, every investment is an
All
opportunity
those
cost
companies are
to a
going to have to
different.
validate that are going to have just as many troubles validating. Well, probably not as many, but they're still going to have their own hoops to jump through.
Right, but if you were to do a DCF on the company's cash flows, and I know the stock doesn't really trade on the fundamentals anyways, but the difference between having robotaxi in 50 states 3 years from now and having robotaxi in 50 states uh, 15 years from now, that's a really big difference, especially when you like discount back and you look at other companies because you could be invested in other companies instead, but people are trying to think decades ahead of time. And, the longer it takes Tesla to actually check all these boxes and get there, it just gives everybody else more time to catch up. And really, the black swan event, I'm not calling this, I don't want to get super bearish here, but, imagine a scenario where they actually don't crack the nut before 2028, and then you get a change in DC. They could really put the screws to him, and they could cost him 4 years outright.
Yep, that's
So
100% true. And and they're going to want to because they're going to want to keep Elon from getting his pay package.
yeah,
Um,
just another complication of him making himself a divisive, you
yeah,
know, too
I
hot of a
would
potato.
love to see him become the technologist and not the primary salesperson
But
again.
that's too late though.
I,
He's
I
Tesla and
agree.
Tesla's him. Yeah.
I agree. And that's, hey, Dan Ives says it twice a day.
hmm
Um,
Speaking of people who are their team, do we want to talk about Joe Burrow and the Bengals and how the Bengals are Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow's the Bengals?
um, Can Joe Burrow play linebacker?
I don't know. So we're
He
gonna
can.
switch.
He did in high school. He
So
played
for
linebacker
the
and safety in
audience,
high school.
we're gonna switch to some football and some less serious stuff now. I'm from Cincinnati, so I'm a Bengals fan. Dougie, how did you end up a Bengals fan?
I'm a big LSU fan, and when my boy Joey B went undefeated at LSU, won the Heisman by the greatest margin ever in history, broke all the passing records, got drafted number 1 by Cincinnati. Oh my god.
Hey, I
Yeah,
didn't choose it
we
either. Okay, I was
we
just I
but
grew up
we
there.
love the guy. We love the guy so much. We're going to support him in the pros. And then they went and drafted his friend. Now Jamar was much younger than he was because Joe was kind of an old man. He was actually a graduate transfer when he came to LSU.
Yeah, I came from Ohio State.
Yep. And Jamar went out a year early, so he was 20 or 21 years old when he got drafted. But they had obviously played together at LSU, won the national championship together.
Unbelievable season.
Unbelievable season. And they just picked right up where they left off in Cincinnati. And it was just like, oh, we got that vibe still going. Cincinnati is now Baton Rouge North.
Do you remember when the
and
media
you
was
see it, and you see it at the games? Like people are in the stands wearing purple and gold, white number 1 jerseys and number 9 jerseys.
Do you remember when the sports media was talking about Jamar Chase, his rookie year in training camp, having a hard time seeing the ball because there wasn't a line on it? Wasn't that the funniest thing ever? Now, last year he got the Triple Crown.
Yep.
Interesting, isn't it?
Well, and they said he had the drops or he couldn't catch. And it was like, did y'all not watch football in 2019? Like, I know we were in the middle of COVID, right? But did y'all not watch football? Did y'all forget football? Like,
oh, I can't wait till we get Joe Burrow back, and then we're gonna still end up losing 62-58. It's gonna be fantastic. Good football.
Oh yeah.
It's just they can't figure it out on defense. They've been drafting defense and O-line for the last 4 years in a row.
Flacco's played so well. And bro, the game 2 weeks ago, those catches T. Higgins was making.
Oh.
And you're like, and he and Flacco have only been on the team together for 2 weeks. Bro, those were sick.
Yeah.
Those were sick.
I have a newfound respect for Baltimore Raven Joe Flacco.
You're like, oh, maybe he was good.
Dude,
maybe
not
he was
only is he
beating us
good,
for a
but
reason.
if you listen to some of his press conferences, that guy's a good leader. Like he's a professional, man. He came in with a good attitude, and he didn't complain when he was in Cleveland. He didn't cry about, oh my gosh, this is the twilight of my career and I'm gonna wither away and go off in silence. He said, give me another shot. And he got a little bit lucky there, getting the two of the best wide receivers in the league. Definitely the best wide receiver, number 1.
Certainly the best pair.
But he came in with a really positive attitude of wanting to lead the team, and I really dig it. He's done a really great job, but that doesn't make up for a generationally bad defense.
Yep. Or a generationally bad offensive line? Question mark.
We'll see. I mean, they've held up okay the last few weeks.
Somehow they can block for Flacco and not for Burrow. I don't. I don't know what that is.
It could just be them clicking as they get deeper into the year, because Cincinnati's had that issue, right? They sort of
because Joey B's more mobile certainly than Joe Flacco.
Way
I was
more
about
mobile.
to say Joe. I was about to say Joe, but they're both named Joe. So
definitely both named Joe.
But I mean, let's be honest. The problem is the head and has been the head coach.
Yeah. Not a fan of Zach Taylor.
He likes to get cute, and thinks he's too smart for his britches. I mean, how many 4th and shorts did we see him go for in the last 4 years? Where it's 4th and short, the game is on the line. You would have been fine if you'd have kicked the field goal 3 times this game, but you went for it all the times, and every single time you ran for it out of shotgun. Like,
Yeah. So some of the play calling is really confusing, especially like when they're ahead.
yeah,
So
or they line up on 4th and 1 in the shotgun with no running back. Like, at least make the defense have to respect the fact that there's a running back in the backfield that they can hand it off to. No, we're not going to do that.
no, put your head down if you're the edge. Put your head down and go after the
And go get
quarterback.
them, yeah, because
Yeah.
there's no running back. Yep, you're not getting chipped. You got nobody in your way.
Yeah, and some of the play calling is just like a little bit conservative to close out games when they're ahead. So like, for example, there's been a few games where they've been up by 10 or 7 just over the course of the Zach Taylor years, and rather than continuing to play offense where they're putting up points all game, they go into this game management mode. They throw out their good playbook and they bring in this dog shit playbook that they decide is going to burn the clock better. They don't even move the sticks once and they give the ball back 90 seconds later. And what do you think happens with a defense like theirs?
Yeah,
It's just, I don't know. I'm not a fan. And then you had the running back Chase Brown, big fan of his. He's done really well. And at a certain point, you're going to get frustrated with the defense not holding up their end of the bargain, especially when you have certain players like Jordan Battle who are happy to be making hits. If it's 1st and 10 and they get a tackle on the running back and it's a big hit, they're all fired up. They're high-fiving each other, but it's still 2nd and 2 and they're ahead of the chain here. If you're the offense, you
yep,
take that 8-yard
yep.
win and you're happy. And the Bengals on defense are high-fiving each other because there was a big hit. It's like, guys, you're giving up touchdowns every single time. Who cares if you're getting hits on them? So Chase Brown sees that after the most recent game and says, why is it that our defense can't close out the game? And then Zach Taylor goes, well, our running back shouldn't say that. And it's everyone's scratching their head. And he's like, he's just saying what everybody else knows. The
Yeah.
defense can't get a stop to save the game.
I understand head coach coming and saying, hey, we don't throw each other under the bus to the media externally. Like, we can have all the fiery disagreements y'all want to have in the locker room, but to everybody on the outside, we're a unit together.
But the running back wouldn't have to come out and say things like that if the head coach was holding the defense accountable for doing their job.
I agree. But let me ask you a question. How do you hold a defense accountable for doing their job if they just don't have the athletes and they don't have the coaching? Like, if they're doing their best, but their best is not good enough. But by definition, because they're doing their best, it just is not going to work. You're in the middle of the season. You can't draft a new player. You might be able to find some guys off the street or sign some practice squad guys to come on, but you're not going to substantially change your defense. Oh, yeah, and you fired the only good defensive coordinator in the league last year.
Yeah, so that was going to be part of my point is the defense is performing poorly because they haven't prioritized developing a lot of the players that they've drafted. They've drafted very poorly on that side of the ball. They won't pay Trey Hendrickson. They're getting really cheap there, and they got rid of the only guy who was holding the whole operation together, and they sent him to a team who might win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, it's like, Duke Tobin's got to go. The operations.
Yep.
The coaches got to go. The whole defense has got to go. You got to clean house on that side of the ball. But it does all start with the head coach of holding that whole operation together. But I understand he's a little hamstrung when the owner doesn't want to pay one of the best edge rushers in the league, and it sends a really bad message. Even drafting Miles Murphy, he had to hold out to get his money because the Bengals do a different contract than the other 31 teams where they don't give guaranteed money to rookies. So he wouldn't show up to practice until that deal got done. So it has ripples downstream on the whole defensive side of the ball when you're not paying your rookies and you're not paying your veterans and the guy who did a really good job coaching, you just sent him out of town.
Yep. Because you wanted to keep like he's no prize. Zach is no prize of a head coach. I mean, if you wanted to make this thing happen, you say, look, I have Joe Burrow for 7 more years in his prime, in his physical prime. I mean, we know that quarterbacks can sometimes play till they're 40. I don't know if Joe Burrow has that in him.
Not the way he gets hit.
Not the way he gets hit. But what are you doing with Zach? Go tell the Denver Broncos that you will give them anything any size check they want for Sean Payton.
But
Put Sean Payton with Joe, bro.
Mike
we do
Brown,
not need. We do not
Mike
need
Brown's
to
going to go do that.
No, but you do not know the pressure that the Loomis family was under to tank the season in 2019 under Sean Payton to get the number to somehow figure out a way to get the pick from the Bengals for Joe Burrow to stay in New Orleans. But Drew Brees didn't retire that year. He waited 1 more year to retire. And they weren't going to waste Drew Brees' last year.
Sure. I mean, in an alternative universe where our owner doesn't screw over our best defensive player, like we got rid of Jesse Bates, we didn't pay him.
Yep.
We didn't pay. We shipped off. Who's the linebacker? 57, Jermaine Pratt. He's in Indianapolis too, along with Anarumo. You had DJ Reader. They didn't pay him. He ended up on a different team, and he was our run stopper. And you can see how they don't stop the run at all anymore.
Yep.
So it's just hard to be positive about that side of the ball.
Well, what do you do when you make your quarterback a $500 million?
But other teams have figured that out. Like, look at the Eagles. Look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs have one of the best defenses in the league consistently.
The Chiefs have Chris Jones.
Right, and they have Patrick Mahomes, and they're able to pay him.
Yeah, and their whole system, but they don't have a hotshot wide receiver, let alone 2. They've got Kelsey, who, as big of a superstar as he is, he's still getting tight end money. He's not getting wide receiver money.
Right.
And then they've got Chris Jones, who is the best player in the league at the most important position on the defense. I mean, they lucked out to have both of those spots locked up.
I mean, Logan Wilson has been in Cincinnati for 6-7 years?
Yeah.
And things got so bad that he requested a trade. What does that tell you?
It tells me the defensive side of the ball is in absolute disarray, and offense is not far behind it because all those guys share a locker room.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens on Sunday against the Steelers. So I know some Cincinnati fans who actually want them to tank just to get better picks on defense, and I don't think that solves the problem. I think you got to get rid of Duke Tobin. You got to get rid of Zach. You got to clear out that defense.
Yeah. Sorry, you can't. At some point, even the offensive-minded head coach has to be accountable for the failures on defense because he's the head coach. It's like, okay, well, last year we let you fire the DC and hire a new guy, but you got the same problems, or they're worse. So this time it's you that's gone. I would just like to see them get rid of Zach.
You know who was available just a few years ago who could fix the defense? Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
How about them New England Patriots sitting at 8-2?
Yep, with Mays as their quarterback. What could he do with Burrow?
I can't even name any of their skill players. Wide receiver, running back. Defense wins championships. It's still true, even in an offensive league.
They got Butte out of LSU as their wide receiver.
Butte? Is that a joke that writes itself?
Keyshawn Butte. No, the joke that wrote itself was the quarterback was Johnson, so it was Johnson to Butte.
Oh, that's
Johnson was throwing to Butte.
That's great. Doesn't get much better. Should we end on that?
Yeah, we should probably end that. It's been 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's
I'm-
getting pretty late
If
here.
anybody has watched this recording all the way through, you're a masochist. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you being here.
We appreciate you. This is kind of the first time Austin and I have done something like this. I think we probably are going to have a couple of notes for improving our overall product, but I just have a good time chatting with the guy and just hanging out online. So we'll probably add some folks to the list and get some more panel going, some good discussions.
If we're lucky enough, we'll be graced by the powerful Stephen
Yeah.
Ferriello or Amit himself.
Some
who
of
knows?
the power brokers. Yeah.
I think we might be able to peer pressure. Matt Money
Yeah,
or
yeah.
even Beneficial. I'm Benny.
Yeah, we can get Ben. Yeah, we get some folks on who we don't hear from except in the chat very much.
I'd love to
Those
hear.
are some folks
I'd
I'd
love
like
to
to
hear
hear from.
Zoe get on here.
Yeah,
Because talking
Yeah.
to him in Miami, dude, he's a smart guy, and I'd like to
he
see
is
more
really
of him.
smart. As Siege and his brother Josh, get those guys. I mean, they have very interesting takes on the world. So next Friday, Michael Wilder will be in Houston.
Really?
Yep.
You guys gonna
And,
go out?
oh yeah. Michael's getting a hotel downtown, and so my wife and I got another room in the hotel down there. So we're gonna go just kind of make a little staycation out of it and party downtown. Ray and Michelle are coming. We could probably get Ray and Michelle, get a panel up there too.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
And
just
at
like
some point, I'll have to make it out to Houston. We can do it live.
that would be awesome. I was trying to arrange that for the big dog when he was thinking of coming to Houston earlier in this year before he canceled it. But I was trying to find him like a legit studio where he could have done like a sit down and
Right.
have the Houston gang in there, right? Because we don't just have Matt, we also have Roy.
Right. Yeah, a whole bunch of people in Houston. It seems to be a hot spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as videos that could be uploaded to the channel, obviously we'll have our podcast style with Dougie and other guests. But also don't be surprised if I throw some company specific deep dives in there. So
That'd be awesome. Looking forward to that.
yeah, just really digging into the details of your Googles, your Amazons, maybe even app loving. Yeah, we can get into AutoZone. I know you'll want to talk about AutoZone at some point, or Caterpillar.
Everybody thinks I love AutoZone.
You do love AutoZone. Stop it.
I don't love anything about AutoZone except for that chart. Except for the chart. Don't tell me that chart does not make you drool.
It's a good chart. It's a good chart. Well, we got to get out of here, so that'll be that. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Did you stop?
I hit end recording. Let's see.